Hey, what's up guys? UrAvgWarGamer is back with another video for the warships, and in this video I will be taking a look at all the tier 8 tech tree ship classes, including destroyer, cruiser, battleship and aircraft carriers. I will explain these ships one by one, and I will explain the strengths and weaknesses and the reason why you should pick this ship for the ranked format, or you should not pick it whatsoever because it is not good enough. I will go through these ships, give you some overview, not gonna explain them in detail because there are a lot of ships in the tech tree lines. So if you do find this video useful, enjoyable, and if you are a newer player in this game, be sure to hit a like and even subscribe to my channel because I make these sort of guides almost every day along with the upcoming content that is coming in World of Warships, so you can get the benefit in both ways. So let's start talking about our tier 8 tech tree destroyer, the Japanese Kagero. Now honestly, the Kagero is a bit in a weird spot. Yes, it does have one of the best concealment for a tier 8 ship, for a tier 8 destroyer, that it gets 5.4 kilometer concealment, which does always helps you to outspot all the other enemy destroyers, and even you can take the salvo and you will be the first one to shoot them because they will be outspotted by you. So this is the good advantage of Kagero that it gets. But you also have the torpedoes, and the torpedoes of the IGN are very hard hitting ones. I don't have them upgraded, but you can get it to up to I think 20k damage level of torpedoes. So if you do find the Japanese destroyers and their torpedoes, work well around your playstyle, I think you can pick the Kagero just because of the stealthy, I would say, the concealment and really good torpedoes. But the problem with the Kagero comes when there is a cruiser that can potentially radar you, but that is for all the destroyers. But there are some destroyers that do a lot better, okay? And also it suffers from the aircraft carrier games. I mean, you do have the smoke, which is the great part of Kagero, but if you swap it for torpedo load booster, which kind of makes it one of the very strongest torpedo boat destroyer at tier 8, it comes with a huge risk. You don't have smoke. How you can go unspotted? Yes, you do have the concealment, which I have already said, but then if you push in and make a mistake or the carrier spot you, then you are basically screwed. But even apart from all the weaknesses that I have explained here, the strengths are also pretty good, and you can somewhat punch up many of the destroyers. But meanwhile, the gunboats will still have some edge. But even then, I would say Kagero should be the pick in ranked battles. You can grind through and you will be top tier, so you are not going to get bottom tier. So that's why the Kagero will makes a bit more sense. And I would say maybe compared to other ships, it's not like super amazing, but it's still a solid ship. You can pick it in ranked battles and can get some value. Meanwhile, the Benson, which is the American destroyer, does have slightly more DPM. In fact, way more DPM than the Kagero. Gets 161 kh DPM, really good guns, 5 of them. So for the gunboat power, you get that access at tier 8. You do have not the best of the torpedoes, but still usable. It's not like Kagero, but again, you get a massive boost in performance and firepower, which I would say makes it good. But however, the Benson also have really good concealment. It can have 5.8 kilometer concealment, not like Kagero, but considering that it does have the boost of the gun power and you also have the smokes, you can definitely use Benson in many situations. The anti-defense is not something that I would say is gonna be the top in the world. In fact, the carriers will definitely gonna love you to strike because you don't have really good anti-defense, but it's definitely slightly better than Kagero, but that does not really make much difference. However, if you want to play this destroyer, I think it's a good pick because of these characteristics: really good guns, decent concealment, probably worthy ship to play in ranked. But my choice for the American ones is gonna be the Osborne. This is the newest. This is basically the newest destroyer that they have added, and it basically makes it very powerful with the help of sap shells. Now, this destroyer line has very key features which makes it not only better than Benson but also compared to Kagero. It does, however, slightly worse concealment than Benson, but it is not bad. I think it does get like 6 kilometer concealment, which is still pretty usable, but it gets the huge pump in guns. The sap DPM on broadside destroyers will be devastating, and you have the best versatile sort of smoke in the game in a tech tree destroyer, which really makes the Osborne pretty powerful. You do have the smoke generator, which is time based. So you basically pop the smoke for 15 seconds if you press the button, and then you basically press the button once again, which is T, to make it onto the cooldown time. You will stop that smoke running for you, and then you can just deploy it whenever you want. The minimum action time is 50 seconds. So that is the good thing about the Osborne. Smoke at demand is something that Kagero and especially Benson is missing. Benson does have a very long smoke duration, but the Osborne has the demand, I would say smoke on demand, which is more powerful in many situations than the Benson, and that the DPM is just amazing, even though it does have only 4 guns. But again, the SAP shell does have really good alpha, so you cannot go wrong with the Osborne at tier 8. I think it's better than Kagero and Benson. You do have less torpedoes, but they are still usable again and have more damage, at least compared to the Benson. Still, Osborne would be my first ship to pick in the ranked battles. On the other hand, Kiev, I don't think so. Kiev, in my opinion, is going to be worthy of playing in ranked. It's going to be a bit difficult. You don't have really, you do have somewhat torpedoes that have 70-kilometer range, but very difficult to use. You do have the smoke, but usually players use repair party. And if you want to get the heal on a tier 8 destroyer that has, average guns like Benson, and the Osborne does have more DPM compared to the Kiev. So I find the Kiev to be in a weird spot, and I would say try not to pick this ship. It's not recommended in my opinion. Ognevoi, well, it does get the heal and the smoke at the same time, but again the same thing, the DPM is basically as equivalent to the Kagero. Now the Japanese have really good torpedoes. They hit hard, but in this case you don't have really good torpedoes. The torpedo range is average, and also the guns are pretty below average. So yeah, Ognevoi, I don't think so I would recommend that ship. It does have heal, but still there are some weaknesses, and there are other destroyers that will do well compared to the Ognevoi and Kiev. The J Maerker, well, I also not like this ship. I mean, again, the same thing. You do have special AP, okay? You have special dispersion. You basically pinpoint accurately farm battleships and cruisers if you want to, but against destroyers you will heavily suffer, especially if the destroyer know how to angle. Your HE-DPM is anemic, really bad. Your torpedoes, well, they are slow, but there are some torpedoes that you can use, but I would say, and your concealment is also not that good. So compared to these ships like Kagero, Benson, and Osborne, the J Maerker is, it's not really good ship in my opinion. Z-23, not something that I would recommend. Again, the same situation. HE-DPM is anemic. You do have the hydro this time, 5 kilometer, but I mean, it will suffer, I can tell you that. It does have some weaknesses. Again, I will just gonna keep it short. I'm not gonna just explain why it's not good, but I can tell you that it's not worthy. The DPM performance is not up to the mark. There are a lot of other destroyers out there that can do way better than Z-23. Now, I was talking about bad destroyers, like in the recent ones, but now the Lightning is actually the really good destroyer. I must say, if you want to pick one destroyer after the Osborne, or basically equivalent to Osborne, if you are grinding this line as a newer player, play Lightning in ranked battles. It's really good. Now its DPM is the same. It's not like crazy good like you find on Benson on Osborne, but what really makes it good is the same thing with Osborne. You have the flexibility of short burst smoke generator. You do have 6 smokes. You can have more, like with the help of superintendent, and unlike Osborne, you have the, I would say, defensive short range hydro surge, which makes you immune to torpedoes. I mean, the torpedoes will get spotted around 3 kilometers. So any threat of torpedo boat destroyer tropping you basically completely negates with the help of this hydro. Decent guns. And what really makes it good is the concealment. So like Kagero having 5.4 kilometer concealment, this can go up to 5.5 kilometer concealment. Really makes this ship very stealthy, and also does still retain good gun performance capability to make it pretty much worth it. And you also have really usable torpedoes. Not really good range, but they can be very usable, and they have, like, you can send one torpedo and you can just pinpoint accurately aim onto a bow and battleship, and you just send one at a time, which kinda has this special gimmick built into the, I would say, the British destroyer. So I would say Lightning is a very worthy ship to pick in ranked battles. I would say you will heavily rely on it and enjoy it if you play that. Adventurer, it's a torpedo boat destroyer. It does have decent DPM. The guns do work, but you don't have smoke, and I always not a fan of a destroyer that does not have smoke at all. Yes, you also have the speed, but compared to the other French destroyer line, which is the Kleber line, I still do not tend to love the torpedo boats in general, and this comes into that category. I certainly don't like it. You can play it, but again, in my opinion, I kind of not. I don't have the bias, positive bias for that, so I'm not gonna really recommend it. But I was talking about the Le Adventurer, but in the case of Le Fantasque, now Le Fantasque is a good destroyer, I must say. Now this destroyer gets pretty good concealment for really good gun performance. Like your DPM might not look good still, 100k DPM, but you can just boost it to pretty much double with the help of main battery load booster. So you have the opportunity to fight against enemy destroyers well because of this main battery load booster. And you do have the speed boost. You do have really good, base speed. If I can show you the speed, you do have like 43 knots of speed, and with the speed boost you get more than 50 knots. Now that is the recommended destroyer. Compared to Le Adventurer, I would say it's better. Yes, you do have less torpedoes. Le Adventurer is a torpedo boat, but it still have torpedoes, it still retains really good gun performance and the main battery load booster and really somewhat of a good concealment. So if you able to outspot that destroyer, even though your concealment is still 6.4, something like that, I think you can make the ship work. Yes, it does not have smoke, which again, my bias is I don't like the non-smoke based destroyers, but still I would say it's worth it. The Kiev, I think it's not a bad destroyer. It does get exhaust smoke generator, so you basically smoke up and you can just move along with that smoke, which is a very interesting feature. You do have the sap this time, you do get sap DPM, but the concealment wise it's gonna be pretty bad. I mean, its concealment is not the best. You're gonna be outspotted by most of the destroyers. Even the Le Adventurer can outspot you almost. So yeah, I'm not a fan of Kiev. You can play it, your DPM is also not too bad. You do also have the emergency engine power. But in my opinion, I would really pick the Lightning, the Le Fantasque, maybe the Osborne for the rank belts. These are my top picks for tech tree ones, not the Kiev, even though it's not too bad. The Hsienyang, on the other hand, is kind of very, very interesting. Now Hsienyang, I would say you want to use smoke, because my bias is that a smoke is always good for disengaging. Against carriers, you can smoke up. Against cruisers or battleship, if you want to farm them, you can smoke up. But this time you have these submarine, not the submarine. This is the surveillance radar that can spot destroyers or anything within 7.5 kilometers. So what you can really do is to have, submarine. Why I'm saying submarine? I think I have this fear of fighting against the submarine. I have to really fight against them. That's why I'm saying this. But yeah, I accidentally says that. But this submarine surveillance radar mod 1, why I'm saying this? That's ridiculous. Surveillance radar mod 1, if you put that, you will increase the radar to 24 seconds and you can improve it even further with the help of the skills, which means that if you have 26-second worth of radar, which if you fully build it in Hsienyang, you can just spot him for days, okay? And everyone out there, your battleship player, cruiser player, can definitely pounce on him, okay? And you do have 4 surveillance radar, so that is pretty decent. On the other hand, you do have really good torpedoes. You do have 10 torpedoes alongside with the torpedo reload booster. Now you get access to good torpedoes, somewhat of a decent guns, only 4 of them compared to the Benson's 5, but they can be still usable. The reload time is pretty decent. So overall, I would say, and I will kind of recommend the Hsienyang, because if you play it with radar, it's very high risk, but it's also high reward. If you find a destroyer that is in smoke, you can just pop the radar. He does not spot you, he does not know that you are here, but you can just literally radar him, gonna cause him panic, everyone will shoot at him, and you will basically farm him like that. It's a good idea to pick Hsienyang just like this, and you can maybe, if it's low in HP, then you can use the guns to kill him, and then you can just simply use the torpedoes with the help of torpedo load booster. So spamming torpedoes along with the radar is a very powerful combo. On the other hand, I was talking about the radar. Split is another ship that I would recommend in this ranked battle. So this destroyer can spot the destroyers from 9 kilometers. Only 10 seconds of radar, but then you can just smoke up. If you find a destroyer in a very tough position, you smoke up, you radar for 10 seconds. You can improve the radar duration by using surveillance radar. 20% action time. It's gonna be 12 seconds of radar, but I think considering the reload time and the DPM, you can still chunk, I think, 25 to 30% of his HP. So this is a good combo, right? And the cooldown time of this split, I would say the surveillance radar is 60 seconds. So you can basically use back and forth. You radar, runs away, and then you push in radar back. You can have 5 radars. So that's basically enough in this very short-term format in the ranked battles. You do have access to speed boost. You do have really good concealment. Sorry, by the way, it does not have really good concealment at all whatsoever. But you do have really good speed. 40 knots of speed. With the help of speed boost, you can get around 45 knots with the help of speed flag. So you should be like pretty good in terms of speed, and you can farm open water, and then you can also smoke up. So you have pretty good versatility. You have the ability to fight against destroyers. This is the biggest thing that I really like about the split. You can radar the same thing that you can do with Hsienyang, you can do the same with split, but the radar duration will be halved. So, and even then, it is pretty powerful because of the radar. So split, in my opinion, with this DPM numbers, it's kinda worth it. Yes, you do have to increase the range with the help of captain skills if you want to open water, but yeah. And you also have the torpedoes, not the best of the torpedoes, but it's a gunboat destroyer, so I can expect these numbers to be just fine. And in my opinion, with the speed, it's pretty much worth it to pick in ranked. Okay, so on the other hand, we do have another pan-European destroyer, Oland. Now, honestly, Oland is not something that I really like. The thing is that Oland still have 6 torpedoes, but it does not have really sort of a radar power that the split gets. Yes, it does have somewhat decent anti-defense now at tier 8. Somewhat. With defensive fire, you can start to fight against aircraft carriers, but again, unfortunate reality is that the aircraft have so many planes in reserve, and he's also tier 8. It's going to be difficult. The numbers of anti-air on the Oland is not enough that it can just shoot down a lot of planes. Yet it can be pretty annoying with the defensive fire, but I would still say the Oland will suffer. Yes, you do have access to heal, but you don't have radar, and you don't have the smoke, which are something that I believe is a lethal combo against destroyer, that you don't have any of that. Yes, you get extra AA, which I would say is not worth it. I will prefer split all day over Oland. Oland is not something that you should grind in rank. Maybe you can play it in random, get to the Haarlem, that's what you can do. But Oland, in my opinion, is not particularly worth it. So, not really good ship to pick in ranked. Alright, so with that said, let's now talk about the cruisers. So in cruiser, we have now the Japanese Mogami. Now Mogami has 2 layouts on the guns. One is 15 guns, 155mm, that has 31mm pen, and I think the other layout is the simple 10 guns format. And honestly, if I would recommend the format if you are looking to play Mogami, even though it's not like super amazing, but I don't think so it's bad at all. The thing about the Mogami really is that you get this layout, which basically makes the HEDPM pretty good at 234,000 with 15 guns. I say that Mogami, if you know how to play, can be a worthy pick. It's not easy for everyone to just pick Mogami and just do so much damage and you basically win the game. The problem is, unlike destroyers, you cannot counter destroyer itself, right? You don't have the radar for that. Some cruisers does have the submarine surveillance. So if you are pissed about the submarines in general, Mogami does at least have one big tool against submarine itself. You do have defensive fire, you do have the fighter, which kinda irritates the carrier a lot because they will be very limited to drop you. But the problem with the Mogami and with every cruiser at tier 8, that you are going to get overmatched. Your armor is not the best. You do have 27mm armor that you find on heavy cruisers, and in tier 8, if there is Bismarck, the Tirpitz, or any battleship that has 380mm gun, you can bounce that shell. That AP shell can be bounced from this armor. You do have that thick plating enough. But then when we talk about the 406mm guns, which we do find a lot at tier 8, you are going to get overmatched and you don't even have the heal to survive. So it's not gonna be easy. Using islands as the cover is the key thing to play in Mogami, and if I say, should I recommend that ship in ranked, I think yes. just because of this insane gun performance. Once you use this 15 turrets layout, this makes it pretty powerful to spam under 10 seconds. You get that performance from the firepower a lot. On the other hand, you also have the torpedoes. You can use them. You do have 8 torpedoes on each side. They can be pretty usable as well. You do have the good concealment, and that's the reason why, and also the good speed, and that's the reason why, if you know what you're doing, Mogami can be usable in ranked. However, compared to Mogami, Shimanto is a worse Mogami, and I would not recommend you at all. The DPM, as you can see, it's funny enough, the DPM of the Shimanto is 141k. You do have again the same 15 guns, okay, on Shimanto, but the reload time is 15 seconds compared to the Mogami's 10 seconds, which is kind of absurd. That is really absurd, right? And that's the reason why Shimanto is in a weird spot. I don't think so that you should play Shimanto at all. Look at the HEDPM, and even the armor is worse, 25mm almost all over the place, so you are more vulnerable to be overmatched. Yeah, I think this is the end of the deal. I don't think so Shimanto is worth it. On the other hand, okay, so now Baltimore is a cruiser that I will recommend because it does have really good guns, it does have radar, and radar definitely counter destroyers. Something that I really like about it, the concealment can be pretty good, so if the moment the destroyer spots you, you do have really good opportunity to radar him back and can counter them. Obviously it does not have access to heal, which is again something that I don't like. Any cruiser that has heal or smoke, in my opinion, will do really well in ranked battles because you do have more survivability, and obviously smoke comes with extra survivability as well. So Baltimore does not have that, but it does get the radar, and if you use the islands as cover, I mean, you just have to really hug the island and reverse to disengage. If you know how to do this, because usually players don't know, they stay around the island, but they still remains open water. They don't know how to just use that island to your advantage and go behind that island to disengage, and can abuse the island and not getting spotted back from anything that is in front of you is something that if you know, then the Baltimore is recommended. It is not easy to play. I mean, the full Baltimore and obviously the tier 10 line, the Des Moines line, basically relies on the island hugging sort of playstyle. So if you know that, you can definitely make it work even without the heals, because you know, island abusing is something that you have to learn. Okay, so if we talk about the Cleveland, I think this is also the same thing in a different way. You do get a lot better HEDPM. You do also have the radar, but that is 9km instead of 10 in Baltimore, and you do have the hydro. Now in the case of Baltimore, you do also have the hydro, but not the defensive AA fire in a separate slot. You either use defensive AA fire or hydro, but the problem is that the Cleveland again suffers from lack of heals. Even though the guns are pretty good, you can counter DDs, but again, the same thing. If you know how to use islands as cover, if you abuse the islands properly, stay unspotted while farming battleships behind the islands, then the Cleveland can work. Otherwise, it will suffer. Your concealment definitely gets a lot better compared to the Baltimore, but still it's not too bad for the Baltimore as well. On the other hand, Chapayev is, compared to the Baltimore and Cleveland, more of a open water sort of cruiser. So but again, the problem is you do have the HEDPM, reload time of the guns, 12 of them is good, but your armor is garbage. It's not going to be pretty good. 25mm plating. Baltimore does have better armor, I must say. You do have this resistance to overmatch 380mm guns. Chapayev and Cleveland are light cruisers, so they suffer a lot. And again, lack of heals can be a bit difficult ship to pick in ranked. But certainly you do have the radar, and you do have a very, very powerful stealth radar. As you can see, even if you build fully with concealment, you do have like really good gap. If the destroyer spot you, you will guarantee getting him in radar. So you can radar him back, and you do get 4 radars. Only for 20 seconds, slightly worse compared to Baltimore and Cleveland, but they are still pretty good. Something that you can make it for yourself work, but again, not having heals is something of a letdown in Chapayev. And we do have a Tallin, which is, I would say, a better pick because the guns have the punch. The the Chapayev and Tallin have the radar, but the Tallin has really good AP performance on the guns. You do have 12 guns once again. The reload time is definitely almost double, and the HE obviously remains the same. The Chapayev and Tallin both have almost same sort of HE in terms of their guns, but you get the massive improvement in AP performance. You do have penetration angles. If you stay unspotted, catch a broadside cruiser off guard, you cannot do really that good in Chapayev with AP, but in Tallin you will absolutely gonna punch him with a very good alpha of 4.6k at tier 8. This sounds to be pretty good, so you can use the Tallin in tier 8 ranked battles. I would say it's the recommended ship along with the Baltimore, Cleveland. Chapayev, I won't say it's super good, but the Tallin seems to be slightly better, and that's why I will definitely gonna recommend it. It does also have, like, you know, almost the good opportunity to radar. Not super stealthy radar that you can do in Chapayev, but it is still good regardless. And yeah, Tallin is, even without the heals, if you know how to open water farm battleships, you can definitely make it work. Hipper, not something I will like. The HE DPM is anemic. You do have improved HE pen 51mm, which is the, I would say, the speciality of German ships in general. You do get this, but I don't think so you particularly need that. I mean, there are some battleships like the German battleships itself and some Russian ones that does have really good thick armor plating, 50mm, but then they have superstructures, and I think the Baltimore, Cleveland, Chapayev, Tallin will still do well, and your HE DPM gets pretty worse compared to them. Something that just does not really make it worth it, and you don't also have the heal, so it will suffer. Albemarle, well, I mean, if you take a look at the initial stats, you will be like, oh, now you have like not only the heal but a super heal, right? And you also have like somewhat of a, you know, okay HE DPM. I'm not gonna say it's really good, but you know, with the help of heals you can survive more. But the problem with the Albemarle is at the tier 8 for a British cruiser, but that it has like a gigantic citadel. It's a floating citadel that you just moving around here and there. Any battleship that has the stray shell on your broadside, it will guarantee almost a citadel. It's not super thick enough as well, so I don't know. It seems to be pretty weird in that spot. And the guns are also not like super crazy, like the HE DPM maybe compared to the Cleveland or light cruisers, or maybe even the heavy cruiser is definitely onto the lower side. Even though it itself is a heavy cruiser by name, it kind of not, because its armor really feels like those of light cruiser. Yes, you do have 30mm deck, but it is very small. You have mostly the superstructure, and also you don't have the radar. So, and you even though have a spotter plane, which can increase the range under many situations, can be valuable. But this armor is such a letdown. I don't think so. Any good player or even a newer player should use this Albemarle. I would not gonna recommend it. However, I know that the Albemarle, for me and my bias is that I will never let you guys pick this ship. But however, Edinburgh, believe it or not, is a very, very good ship in this ranked battle. Simply because two things. Now, either you can play it in smoke, which again something that I'm not a big fan of that, okay? Smoke is not something that I'm gonna use. I'm gonna use the radar, okay? I have talked about the destroyers before, like the Hsienyang and I would say the Split. You can stealth radar with the help of this 10km range, okay? You do have pretty decent concealment at around 9.3, 9.2, something like that, or maybe 9.4. I don't exactly know the numbers, but it can go less than 10km, which means you can stealth radar DDs, and alongside with that, the biggest strength that comes in Edinburgh is gonna be the heals. I always love the cruiser that have good guns. Yes, in this case we do have only AP, but AP DPM is still okay. For 12 guns, you do have 7.7 seconds of reload time, 289k AP DPM, still feels good. And you can slap battleships, cruisers, and even destroyers with this insane improvement in pen angles. And then having the short fuse, guaranteeing getting pens on destroyers on even a very steep angles, make Edinburgh to be very, very powerful against that destroyer, especially with the stealth radar. And then you do have the hydro, and this combination of super heal and radar makes Edinburgh to be very good. Now, unlike Albemarle, it does not have like super raised citadel above waterline. Albemarle is like crazy bad armor, but this is bad. Edinburgh does have like less armor thickness compared to I would say the Albemarle, but it is still gonna be resistant because it's low and slightly above water line. So Edinburgh is definitely really good. If you know how to open water, You can tank some shells directly if they hit you. If you stay angled, you are not going to get Citadel. And yeah, you can sometimes bounce the shell from here, which is kind of weird thing, but it does tend to happen. You're gonna be overmatched by even some of the heavy cruisers. Yes, I know that, but your super heals are the best part about the Edinburgh, alongside with the radar. Kind of makes it worth it in ranked battle. If you want to pick a cruiser, if it's my first choice, to be honest, if it's my only choice between Baltimore, Cleveland, Chapayev, Tallin, I think I will pick Edinburgh. Honestly, this ship is so good. You can counter so many things. You can fight with so many, in so many situations, even against aircraft carriers with the help of super heal. Charles Martel, on the other hand, is also a good long-range cruiser. Now, the benefit in the Charles Martel have is that you get 5 main battery load booster with the help of Superintendent, okay? And since the ranked battle format is small, if you tend to use all of the main battery load booster, you can pump out a lot of damage, okay? And yes, you do have, average HDPM on the guns. It feels not good. For a heavy cruiser, this seems to be the norm. We get around 226 to 140k HDPM that you have also seen in Albemarle. It does not have access to heal, but it does have access to speed. And if you are a lover of speed juking, if you have ever tried out speed juking in the French cruisers, you will eventually see that you can throw a lot of the battleship's aim by just simply slowing down if you were moving really, really fast. If the battleship shoots at you, you instantly slow down your speed, and the engine boost along with the acceleration does help in Charles Martel. You can do that, and you can pump and dish out a lot of damage, but the big downside is, how will you counter destroyers? The same case with the Albemarle and Hipper, the Charles Martel has the same problem. So that is where I can say that it's gonna be a bit in a very weird spot compared to the Baltimore, Cleveland, Tallinn and Edinburgh. Those have radars and can still do well with the guns. Charles Martel does not bring anything very special to the table, except with the speed boost and the main battery load booster, which can dish out some damage, but I would still say not sort of worth it to play it without heals. On the other hand, yeah, I might say about the Charles Martel to be not super good, but can be okay. The Cherbourg is actually a good recommended tier 8 cruiser in ranked battles. Now, why the Cherbourg? Now, Cherbourg has heals. Okay, Cherbourg gets the heals. It also gets the main battery load booster. You do have like 305mm guns. Yes, it does have battleship levels of reload time, which is kind of the downside. But the thing about the Cherbourg is that it does have the heals and somewhat of a decent armor. Yes, you can stay for yourself full bow in onto a battleship, especially against the Bismarcks and Tirpitz and maybe the Vanguards. Any battleship that has 380mm guns, you will fight particularly well against them, except that you have 25mm bow compared to the Baltimore's 27. So that's where it can be suffer. Someone if shoots at the bow, at close ranges, you're going to get overmatched from even 380mm guns. So something you should really know. But this AP pack a punch, and yes, its HE is pretty anemic. It's all about AP. Broadside cruisers, smash them. You smash them with the main battery load booster. Broadside battleship, you smash them, and you do have still relevant sort of speed with the help of speed boost. Can go up to almost 40 knots, something that you can kind of use in ranked battles. I would say compared to Charles Martel, I will pick Cherbourg more. On the other hand, Amalfi can be a good pick. Now, Amalfi also kind of does the same thing as the Charles Martel or Albemarle or Hipper, because it will farm damage. Okay, it's basically relying on farming damage with the help of this time sap shells. Problem is the sap DPM is not like crazy, but it is still good enough for a heavy cruiser. Now, the best part about the Amalfi that it does have submarine surveillance. So again, same thing with the Mogami. If you do love to fight and take down the submarines by yourself, you can use some submarine surveillance, but you get the exhaust smoke generator. You get 3 of them with the help of Superintendent, and this gives Amalfi some survivability, but not still enough to basically tank battleships shells directly like the Edinburgh or maybe like the Albemarle. But Albemarle is like crazy in just taking all the Citadel damage. It will just gonna get blasted. But Amalfi also have the problem of having very high raised above waterline Citadel, so it's not easy to play, but you do have some safety with the help of, I would say, the exhaust smoke generator. So if you are a newer player, pick these ships wisely. And I would kind of say that you look for the destroyers more than cruisers, because there are only some and very few cruisers that will do particularly well in this tier 8 ranked battles. Harbin, on the other hand, is a very interesting cruiser. You do have somewhat of a decent DPM. Look at the HE DPM. Look at the smoke that it gets. Look at the heal that it gets. Like Harbin, compared to the Charles Martel, maybe Cherbourg, Amalfi, a lot of many other cruisers that don't have radar. Okay, I have to say one thing. If you really look and compare Harbin with all the other cruisers that don't have any radar, it gets quite a lot of things in return. The biggest, and I have my bias, the biggest and the best value from a cruiser that you can possibly get if it does have smoke, and also having the heal at tier 8. And Harbin get both things. Okay, your survivability might not be that good, but you can get this HP up to 31 or 30,000 with the help of captain skills and also this flag, Charlie Kilo. And also I haven't used this hull, which already improves it, so you can get it up to 30,000. You do get the heal, and you get so much survivability with the help of smoke that unlike other cruisers, it will farm and survive more, and also really good HE DPM on top of that. I mean, Charles Martel, Cherbourg, even Amalfi, they all are heavy cruisers, but they are not still tanky enough for its tier to just tank battleship shells. They have superstructure, some of the armor is still weak from 25mm bow and stern. Well, you cannot mitigate any of that, even if you somewhat having the heavy cruiser title entitled onto that ship. And then this comes into play, Harbin. And I would say with the help of the torpedoes, by the way, which is like super extra, super powerful as well, good range, a lot of torpedoes that you can spam, on top of the really good guns, any battleship pushing you, it has to die. And it will die, honestly. It is so good in that regard. You have Pan-Asian smokes, very good cooldown time, very, I would say, not the best of the dispersion time, but it is pretty good, especially if you really compare it, that it gets the smoke back just after 30 seconds. So Harbin gets quickly its smokes, and its much needed smokes makes it pretty good for tier 8 tech tree cruiser. Haarlem, I mean, if you are a fan of airstrikes, and if you are trying to learn airstrikes, then it's not a good ship, because airstrikes and learning them is a big curve that you have to get through to basically play this ship correctly. So you do have airstrikes, that's the gimmick, and that's why in return it does not get like superb HE DPM nor AP DPM. You do have somewhat of a punchy AP for 203mm guns, but then that's the same thing with Charles Martel or Cherbourg, okay? Cherbourg does have way better AP, okay? So Haarlem, airstrike gimmick, yes, it does have access to heal, which is pretty interesting, but even then, because of the anemic DPM and having more reliance on the airstrikes, it can be a bit difficult, and I would not gonna recommend this ship for that. Jaarsveld, well, now it also gets the heal. It's a light cruiser version of Dutch, so I would say not really. Jaarsveld, again, similar thing. You rely on airstrikes to farm damage. I don't think so. I will going to recommend that in any way or form. Auckland, okay, now Auckland is kind of similar in terms of having the fuel smoke generator, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, you have the crawling smoke generator, which basically crawls when you are in 1/4 of your speed. So if you keep moving with that slow speed, you can stay in smoke and farm damage, and you do have the heals, but the thing is that you don't have radar. But even then, compared to many of other cruisers, like maybe the Amalfi, yes, it does have exhaust smoke, but still compared to the Amalfi, Hipper, you know, many of the ships that trying to only rely winning games by farming damage, it will do better just because of the smoke. And that's why if you're really thinking of playing this ship in a ranked, well, you can do that, but still the game impact will never gonna be the same as you find on DDs, just because you do have the lack of radar. So yeah, that's the problem with all these ships that does not have radar. How you will counter destroyers? Well, that's the question that you have to answer. I mean, you can win games by farming battleships and all that stuff, but it does not tend to happen a lot. I.Allende is the same thing. Now it does not have heals, but it gets something very interesting. You get the F key for its nation flavor, and you do get like really good consumable preparation or reload time by -80% if you land specific amount of shells onto a target, right? If you're able to land a lot of shells, you get the F key, which improves the reload time of all the consumables by minus, I would say, 80%. So this can be pretty handy if you have the F key ready, because you pop the heal. If you have taken a huge damage, it does have a vulnerable citadel. As you can see, it does have really big vulnerable citadel, lightly armored citadel, so cruisers can also smash you. But the blessed part about this cruiser is, yes, and by the way, I will go to the weakness very quickly here. The best part about this cruiser is that you do have the radar and the hydro acoustic search in different slots, and you do have the super heal, and you can press the F key and reload all of these consumables fairly quickly if you do that in the first place. Makes it pretty interesting, but the problem is it does have really good defensive tools, but not so good I would say oppression or farming tools to deal with a lot of other classes. Yes, APDPM looks good, but compared to the Edinburgh, I still do not believe that Allende is a good choice. I think if I have to pick, compared to the Allende and Edinburgh, I will pick Edinburgh always, because it does really well with the help of radar and the, I would say, stealth radar, and with the super heals. So it will do just better in my opinion compared to Allende. Cataluna, the same problem, the same thing that you do in maybe the Charles Martel, maybe in the Amalfi, that's the same thing you will do here, with only the gimmick of having now the burst fire. So I mean, you can burst onto a broadside cruiser and can do way more damage, but that's basically it. You do have access to heal this time, but if I have to really kind of pick between Charles Martel and Cataluna, I will maybe pick Cataluna because of this opportunistic sort of approach with the burst fire and some extra heal that you can have, and also the spotter plane. So yes, it is interesting, but I would say out of all the cruisers, I will pick maybe the Baltimore, Cleveland, Tallin, Edinburgh, these sort of ships over, and maybe Harbin over all these ships which I have explained here. So you guys should be the judge how you counter against destroyers if you pick Cataluna, in my opinion, or maybe the ship that have only reliance on the gun performance by farming ships in general. You let me know in the comments. I would like to explain the carriers and battleships, but this will be for the other video, because I think this video gets too long, and hopefully you get the good idea of the tech tree ships in general. I have explained you some of the strengths. I didn't explain them in detail. I hope this answers the question for newer players. They get some idea what are the best ships and what are not. So you can definitely at least analyze and figure it out for yourself, which ship should I play in ranked. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys liked it, and if you do, please let me know in the comments. And last but not the least, I would like to give the big shout out to my Patreon members. These guys are directly supporting my channel, and you guys can do that too if you want to. So yeah, you can go and check out my Patreon page, and I will give tons of benefits in return if you do that. So that's it from my side. Take care and peace out.